You have
Sorry,
it?
the chair said he'll respond in 2 weeks, but we'll be on recess. So I'd request maybe the response comes before we go on recess. Thank you.
So, Honorable Chair Meli, are you able to bring a response by Thursday?
Not.
It's a very simple question.
I will. The clerk's office will forward the questions to the ministry. Then I will ask them if it is possible they can bring it before Thursday. Yes.
Are you able to answer on Thursday? Don't raise the hopes of the member.
Maybe
you will not be able.
I'll expedite it, sir.
So we can list it
Thursday, yes.
For Thursday?
Yes.
Okay. Next. Next order, statements. Majority Leader. Incidentally, if you get the answer, there's no requirement that you must come and read it on the floor. You can communicate with the member. Yes.
Honorable Speaker, I have two statements. Maybe with your guidance, there is a one on NGCDF and there was also a response. Let me do the NGCDF one. Okay. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 44, 2B, I rise to issue a statement on the progress regarding the submission of nominees to the NGCDF committees from the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board for the National Assembly approval. Honorable Speaker, on 15 September 2022, the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board issued a circular regarding the appointment of members of the National Government Constituency Development Fund committees. The deadline given by the board for submission of proposed nominees from the respective constituencies was 30th October 2022. Honorable Speaker, as of 28th November 2022, the board had received names of proposed members of National Government Constituency Development Fund committees from 283 constituencies as follows. 283 constituencies have been processed and submitted to the National Assembly for approval pursuant to Section 43(4) of the NGCDF Act 2015, and attached as Annex number 1, and I'll be tabling this, Honorable Speaker, is the entire list of the 283 constituencies. Another 3 constituencies are in the process of being analyzed for compliance before being transmitted to the National Assembly for approval. Again, attached as Annex number 2, Honorable Speaker, to avoid just going through the list. Honorable Speaker, Kandara constituency, which is awaiting a by-election, is among the said 6 constituencies, as well as Garissa Township. The board shall therefore analyze the said constituencies resubmitted list of nominees upon conclusion of the upcoming by-elections for those 2 constituencies that have by-elections. 3, Honorable Speaker, 4 constituencies are yet to submit their respective lists, and they appear as Annex 3. It is worth noting, Honorable Speaker, that the board is coordinating with its officers to fast-track submission of nominees for analysis for conformity with the NGCDF Act and its regulations before presentation to the National Assembly for approval. Garissa Township is also, as I mentioned, is also awaiting a by-election and is among the said 8 constituencies. The board shall therefore analyze the said constituencies list of nominees upon conclusion of the by-election also for Garissa. Honorable Speaker, the details of the submission status are summarized in the tables annexed to this statement showing their respective statuses. And I thank you, Honorable Speaker, but also, Honorable Speaker, just to mention that we have engaged with the Honorable Attorney General on the gazettement of all these 283 constituencies that have complied, and he has indicated that the gazettement of all those constituencies will commence immediately. He has indeed directed his officers to prepare the gazette notice for gazettement of the 283. Maybe to also ask the members, I don't want to read their names, the names of their constituencies, who are yet to submit or whose committees are yet to be submitted, to fast-track that process to ensure that their DCCs and their fund managers do fast track the submission of those lists, so that even by the time, Honorable Speaker, the others are gazetted, we are not left with 7 constituencies, with the exception of the 2 that are yet to have their by-elections later this next month, Honorable Speaker. At least those that don't have by-elections and they have members representing them, to speak to their fund managers to hasten that process, so that upon gazettement, then the committees should be ready for the first disbursement of the fund, which, Honorable Speaker, I am sure members are very eagerly awaiting because of the pressure that we are all suffering from our constituents, especially on the disbursement of bursaries. And it is hopeful that once these committees are now gazetted, then the National Treasury, and I'm sure the chair, NGCDF, is in consultations, and we are doing that together with the National Treasury and the Office of the Attorney General to see how we can fast-track the disbursement of funds, so that at least by the time we proceed on recess, we have at least money to disburse bursaries in January, because many of our people are indeed hopeful and suffering and waiting for disbursement of bursaries and completion of projects for those of us who have projects that are awaiting disbursement of funds to complete. And of course, for the new members, it's imperative that they're able to expedite the processing of projects. And I want to also ask members that this is a time before, as the names are gazetted, to ask your committees, your respective committees in your constituencies, to submit their proposals to the National Board. And indeed, for all those that have been approved by the National Assembly, there is no reason why you should not be pushing those committees to submit their proposals, because it is against those proposals, again, that disbursements are made. Therefore, let's not give anybody an excuse to say they are not disbursing funds because we have no proposals submitted and approved for exchequer releases. Therefore, with that guidance, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay this statement on the table of the House.
Honorable Muliungi, when you want to catch the Speaker's eye, it's not in any standing order to raise your hand. There is a button for intervention.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
If you look at your machine,
Yes.
you'll find the button on intervention had been pressed.
You are not there.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Muliungi, you are not there. I've given you the floor.
Sorry, I wonder what's wrong with these machines. Being the architect and the designer of this house.
Machines don't lie. You are not there, but go ahead.
I wonder what could be wrong with the machines. Honorable Speaker, following what the majority leaders tabled in this house, is he trying to insinuate that the gazettement of the members of ancient CNDF committee are tied to the disbursement of the funds to the constituencies? Can he be clear? Because from what he has said, it looks like those members have to be gazetted before the funds are disbursed to the constituencies.
Are you seeking clarification, or you are asking a question?
Clarification.
Or you are raising a challenge?
Clarification, Mr. Speaker, sir.
You are seeking clarification.
From the majority.
Majority leader, you've heard what the member has asked?
Honorable Speaker, you know, the Honorable Muliungi knows I am good with my language, and therefore I don't need to insinuate. I state, and I made a statement. I did not insinuate anything. I made a statement detailing how many constituencies have had their list approved, the 283, the 7 that are yet to submit list, with the exception of Kandara and Garissa Township. And of course, I also indicated that we should not give anyone an excuse. And I use the word excuse. I don't know where the member was, what he was listening to. That was not to insinuate anything. It was just to say that we should not allow anybody to use that as an excuse. But of course, it's also equally important for the Honorable Muliungi to appreciate that it is not the member of parliament, it is the NGCDF committee at the constituency level. And it's important even because of those who have taken NGCDF to court to understand that it is not members of this house who manage NGCDF. It is those committees. For them to even be able to sit and expedite the utilization of NGCDF funds, they have to be duly gazetted. I think that is rather clear that they have to be gazetted for them to be able to even submit proposals to the board to use those proposals, then to make exchequer requests based on the projects that are submitted. So it was just by way of advising, especially for the benefit of our new members. And the Honorable Mulyongi does not qualify to be among any of the new members.
Your next statement, you said you had two.
Honorable Speaker, this is a response from the Ministry of Agriculture, the ministerial response to the statement regarding the planned importation of 900,000 metric tons of maize in the country from the Cabinet Secretary, Agriculture, the Honorable Franklin Mithika-Linturi. And the statement I'll read as it is, Honorable Speaker. It was addressed to the chair because I think the minister thought the question should have gone to the chair, not to the leader of majority. The statement that was sought by the member for Pokot South, the Honorable David Kosing. On 25th November 2022, the ministry received an invitation from the clerk of the National Assembly to appear before the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock to provide a response to a statement regarding the planned importation of maize in the country by the Honorable David Kosing, MP. I wish to give my response on the matter raised by the Honorable Member in the following order. One, on introduction, the ministry has a mandate to ensure national food and nutrition security for all citizens at all times. The ministry monitors and analyzes agriculture food systems with regard to the national food policy implementation, food availability and accessibility, and early warning signals on food production, stocks, marketing, prices, quality, importation, research, and capacity at all levels to inform decision-making towards realization of national food and nutrition security. The government supports the progressive realization of the right to adequate food for national food security as provided for in the Constitution. This entails ensuring that quality food is available in sufficient quantities to satisfy the dietary needs of individuals, free from adverse substances and accessible in ways that are sustainable. The government has the obligation to protect individuals' cultural means to access their food in adequate amounts and quality, and proactively engage in activities intended to strengthen people's access to and utilization of resources to meet their food needs. Honorable Speaker, the ministry also acknowledges that responsible investment in sustainable agriculture and food systems is essential for enhancing food security and nutrition, and in supporting the progressive realization of the right to adequate food. Our national food systems transformation pathway encompasses all aspects of food insecurity, ranging from economic, social, and environmental drivers, and values sensitizing all actors along the value chain, facilitating a conducive policy environment to fulfill our food and nutrition requirements sustainably, while guaranteeing that opportunities for food security and nutrition for future generations are not compromised. On statement of the problem, Honorable Speaker, despite efforts by the ministry, our food production has remained below our consumption needs. Consequently, imports of most of our staples, maize, wheat, rice, and edible oils have correspondingly increased in tandem with our consumption demands. Kenya is not self-sufficient in maize production, with an average of 4 to 6 million bags imported annually to meet the total demand for both human consumption and animal feed production. Most of the maize is imported by the private sector and relief agencies. Currently, the national maize balance sheet projected to end of January 2023 shows a surplus of about 14.8 million by 90 kg bags, only after taking consideration of the expected long rains. harvests, and monthly consumption needs. This balance is inadequate to take us to the next significant harvest in August or September of next year, 2023. With our monthly utilization of about 3.5 million bags, human consumption and other utilization, the surplus stocks could last about 4 months, up to April of 2023. However, this may seem adequate, but farmers rationally retain food stocks for household use until the next significant harvest is realized, an extra for income during the year. Hence, most of the surplus stocks after January will be available mainly amongst the farming households in the North Rift parts of Kenya, parts of Western and South Rift counties. Some short rain season harvest expected in January or February in the Western and Nyanza regions will mainly support households in the region. Consequently, millers and the market-dependent non-farming population may not access adequate quantities for milling and consumption, respectively. As early as February 2023, Honorable Speaker, therefore, there may be inadequate quantities both for milling and for consumption. National food availability and accessibility is determined by stock levels after production and importation in case of production shortfalls or gaps. This implies that the country is likely to continue experiencing further acute shortages starting earlier in March 2023. Honorable Speaker, the national food security situation may seem stable in most counties in the medium and high rainfall areas despite notable decline in production of maize, the common staple of most households. However, the food security situation in northeastern, southeastern, and coastal ASAL regions remains precarious following 4 consecutive poor crop seasons. The available stocks may not flow effectively towards deficit areas. May not flow effectively towards the deficit areas. Hence, some areas will continue to suffer acute food shortages. In 2022, the households in need of food aid increased from 2.8 million in March 2022 to 3.5 million in April to the current 4.5 million people. As a response, the government, in collaboration with the development stakeholders, has been undertaking normal food distribution, water tracking, and enhanced school feeding program to the affected households in the most affected ASAL counties to avert hunger and acute malnutrition. Honorable Speaker, on the performance of the 2022 rainy seasons, Kenya largely depends on rain-fed agriculture. The 2022 long rain season, March, April to May, started late and was erratic in most counties. The planting was therefore erratic, with farmers experiencing poor germination and forced to replant. Of the prepared land, about 80% was planted with cereals. Farmers in most ASAL counties, parts of Lower Eastern, Coast, and Northeastern, did not plant or achieve any crop harvest. Price of farm inputs, especially fertilizer, have remained high, ranging from 6,000 shillings to 6,500 per 50 kg bag until the subsidy was introduced for the short-range crops to cushion farmers when this government took office sometime this year. To avert this situation, the government has planned to extend the provision of fertilizer subsidies for the long rain season. The ministry has also been availing pesticides and sprayers to contain the spread of the armyworm, in addition to training of field extension officers. On short rain season performance, the current season has performed poorly, characterized by delayed onset and erratic rainfall. The eastern to coastal regions have experienced delayed and irregular planting. Overall, the poor short rains will lower crop production, further threatening food security and availability in the coming year, including for livestock feed. The prices of most staples remain quite high, above long-term average, and regional prices are also reportedly high. Normally, the government allows importation of white non-GMO maize with or without duty to cover for the shortfall in local production. However, the white non-GMO maize has been scarce and mainly sourced from Mexico, EAC and commercial regions, albeit at a premium price. This restriction prevents the country from getting adequate flow of maize. It's against this background, Honorable Speaker, the ministry, through a cabinet memo, requested the cabinet to lift the ban and approve importation of GM maize grain for consumption, and in the long term, allow cultivation of GM maize varieties. This follows the completion of safety assessment conducted by the National Biosafety Authority and variety performance evaluation carried out by the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services, KEFIS. The recent national performance trials, NPTs, by our competent authorities have demonstrated that some biotechnology products have economic, health, and social benefits we can tap on, including drought resistance, pest, disease resistance, high yielding, and nutrient-dense foods. These traits could reduce the cost of production, improve nutrition, and increase farmer incomes compared to the current conventional Czech varieties. On the plan of action, Honorable Speaker, the government plans to allow maize importation from the region and facilitate further inflows from outside the EAC and COMESA regions. Another cabinet memo has been prepared to seek approval to import maize duty-free to improve availability and accessibility in good time to evade a hunger crisis in mid-2023. The ministry has recommended to the cabinet to approve for 3-month period duty-free importation of 900,000 metric tons, that is 10 million by 90 kg bags, of white maize by registered millers, starting from 1st February to 30th April 2023, to fill the national deficit and avert an impending crisis from April 2023. Meanwhile, registered millers should continue to import wheat under the prevailing 10% duty remission scheme and rice at prevailing duty rates to complement maize supplies. Further, the ministry will work towards committing more resources towards promoting intensification of production of local staple foods to reduce the deficit gap and facilitate food diversification. That, Honorable Speaker, I submit, signed by the Honorable Franklin Medeka Linturi, Cabinet Secretary, Agriculture. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Who was the questioner?
From the Honorable Kosing.
David?